It was summer in a remote village where time seemed to stand still in silence and only the wind and birdsong served as a backdrop to the place. But one family, who decided to spend their vacation in their ancestral home, witnessed something that could not be explained rationally. After they moved into the house, strange things began to happen. At night they heard noises and knocks on the door, but when they went out to check, no one was there. Towels and dishes began to move in the kitchen, inexplicably, and in the middle of the night they heard unfamiliar voices that seemed to come from the walls. One night the wife heard her name whispered, and when she turned around, she saw a shadow slowly approaching her. The woman cried out in fright and woke up. She was sure it was a dream, but the next morning she found finger marks on her neck. They tried to leave the house, but so eerie were their dreams that they decided to stay, hoping it would all end. One night they heard someone's footsteps on the stairs, and when they looked down they saw a stranger that neither of them recognized. He slowly approached them and whispered, "Don't try to leave." From then on, they no longer dared sleep. Their lives turned into a nightmare, and they were trapped in this house with the fear that this place would not let them go. They were sure that they were not alone in this house, and that something inhuman dwelt there. Each day the paranormal phenomena in the house grew more intense and the frightened family increasingly lost their strength and sanity. At night they heard unseen presences that seemed to follow them in every corner of the house. One day, as the family gathered in the kitchen to try to wake up after a sleepless night, the whole house was filled with a voice that came from somewhere within the walls. "You will never leave here." The voice was so eerie and ominous that they were sure there was a demon in the house. They decided to call an exorcist to get rid of this sinister entity. When the exorcist arrived at the house, he felt a strong energy that filled every corner of the house. He performed a cleansing ritual, but the spirit was still in the house. Eventually, the exorcist decided that he could not help them anymore and left, warning the family that they must leave the house immediately or they would risk their lives. The family took their belongings and left the house immediately. They would never forget the terrifying experience they had in that house, and they have never returned there since. They felt that the spirit that inhabited the house stayed with them, forever changing their lives and leaving behind a trail of fear and anxiety. After this family left the house, they began to research the history of the house and discovered that it had been built on the site of a former cemetery. Most of the bodies had been moved to another location, but apparently not all of them. Perhaps that is what brought the spirit to this house. The family did their best to forget about this terrible experience, but its traces remained with them. Every time they passed by this house, they felt the cold that emanated from the walls. Every time they saw pictures of that house, they felt anxious. But even after that, when they moved into the new house, something still happened. They heard footsteps, the sounds of doors opening and windows closing. They saw shadows moving on the walls. They even felt touches and heard whispers when they were alone. The family couldn't understand why all this was happening until one day they came across an old picture of the house they lived in. In the background, they saw a strange silhouette that resembled a man. The family realized that the spirit that had lived in their old house had moved in with them and was now haunting them. From the moment the family realized that the spirit from their old house had moved in with them, their lives turned into a real nightmare. No one could explain why the spirit was haunting them, but it was undeniable. The family began doing research to figure out how to get rid of this spirit. They contacted a local psychic who convinced them that the spirit was connected to the area where the old house was built. The psychic advised them to perform a cleansing ritual and move to another house, far away from the land. The family agreed to this and began preparations for the cleansing ritual. They invited a local priest and psychic to help them perform the ceremony. That evening, the family lit candles and placed incense to create an atmosphere of mysticism. The psychic began reading prayers and conducting the ritual, and the priest consecrated the house and invoked Saint Michael to protect the family. During the ritual, the family felt intense pressure and cold, but they did not stop. After the ritual, the family moved to another house, but the spirit continued to haunt them. They noticed that the spirit became less aggressive, But strange things were still happening. They kept contacting a psychic to try to solve this mystery. Eventually, the family realized that they could not get rid of this spirit completely, and that the only way to deal with it was to accept its presence and respect its territory. They decided to leave the house they now live in, but continue to visit the area where their old house was regularly to make peace with the spirit. Since then, the family has lived at peace with the spirit, and although strange things sometimes happen, they know that the spirit does not wish them harm and simply wants to be heard. The family realized that it was impossible to completely get rid of paranormal phenomena, but it was possible to learn to live in peace with them. They began to study research about paranormal phenomena and began talking to people who had encountered similar problems. This helped them better understand the nature of paranormal phenomena and learn how to deal with them. The family continues to live in their new home, but they have become more with the areas that may be associated with paranormal phenomena. They have installed a surveillance camera and sound recording system to keep records of random noises or movement that may be associated with paranormal phenomena. Although they cannot completely get rid of their problem neighbor, the spirit, they have learned to live in harmony with it. They believe that it was an important life lesson and that their experience can help other people who encounter paranormal phenomena.